Hey you guys, my name is Najwa. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I would love to invite you to join our little community. Go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, hit that bell so you know whenever I post a video. Support this channel, help us grow by donating a super thanks. You can also donate through Patreon. It's patreon.com/itstherealnajwa. You can also join as a YouTube member here on YouTube Premium. You can join as a YouTube member on my channel, my premium membership on YouTube. You can also just sort of click that bell. If you click that bell, you know whenever I post a video. I want to talk to you right now about why it's so imperative, if you want to save American democracy, to vote blue in 2024, Biden-Harris in 2024. And I'm going to make my arguments for why I think that is the best choice as a centrist. I don't really fall Republican or Democrat, so I think that I can provide my sort of 2 cents, and while I don't claim to speak for every person, I think that it could be something valuable, especially for millennials out there, especially if you're a millennial like me, or you're a Gen Z, or you're a young person, and you might be kind of discontented with where all the culture wars at. I think that people who are like me, who are in their late 20s, early 30s, you guys can probably remember back to a time, if you're American, where, and even if you're international, but you can probably remember back to a time where politics in general was just a lot more tame and less culture war focused. You could probably remember back to a time before social media existed and where there was less of a bright light shown on mental health disorders, on sort of stress and anxiety. You can probably just remember back to a time that just seemed, for lack of better words, calmer, that seemed more stable in terms of financially, but also socially. And I think that we can get back to that point. I definitely think that it's possible. And I think that people can maintain and retain their political affiliation, whether that be Democrats, Republicans, swing voters, centrists, however you want to call it, independent, green. I think that we can all retain that. We can stay in sort of a two-party system that is American democracy, with all the kind of little stops in between, centrist, independent, so no labels. I think we can keep all of that. We can keep our individual values, our individual beliefs, and remain American, remain committed to our individual identities as different Americans with different belief systems, different sort of moral, how do I want to say it, sort of different emphasis on different sort of moral or societal or ideological commitments. So maybe one person, for instance, really cares about going to church every week, and maybe one person is atheist. Maybe a person is Hindu, maybe a person is Baha'i. We should all be able to keep those things. Maybe a person is Jewish or Muslim. We should all be able to keep those things and still be American, and still have our identity attached to it, and no one's tooting anyone's horn, no one's popping off. And I think that Biden-Harris 2024 is what leads us to maintaining, but also sort of getting back to that era of stability where everything is just not so weighted. And I'm going to try to speak today in terms that are very, very natural and colloquial, because I feel like right now we've gotten to a time where everything is politicized, and there was a time where you could just speak very plain-spokenly with voters, very plain-spokenly with your neighbor, very plain-spokenly with your family, with your friends, with the people in your community. But now there's so much fear and so much anxiety and a lot of negative emotions that have been stirred up. And yes, there are external and internal threats out there. But America's got one of the best military defenses in the world. The police department needs to be reformed, but the police, we have some of the hardest, despite what we see of these instances of people police officers, namely, who are extremely corrupt. We also do have people in blue, also our prosecutors, our judges. We have some of the hardest working law enforcement officers, in the world, some of the most committed, and who actually really see people as people, who don't see people as someone to target at. So I definitely want us to know that, yes, bad things happen, but the frameworks of our government has functioned for a very long time. It will continue to function, but we have to continue to advocate. And I feel like Biden Harris is our best bet to advocate to not only maintain a democracy in America, but also to have our life be stable again. And I hope that I verbalize that in a good way. But I wanted to start this off before I really get into the reasons why I think personally Biden Harris is the best bet in 2024 for whoever you are. Now, I mentioned earlier whether you're Republican or Democrat, and I'm going to speak in terms of the two-party system, but I am also saying that with you sort of knowing in your head that there's lots of stops in between. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to say Republican and Democrat, but we know they're independent centrists, like we all mentioned before, no labels, etc. But I'm going to speak on terms of a two-party system because that's really where it's been hammered in American democracy and politics for quite a while. I feel like for both, I have a little bit of a different, how do I want to say this? I have a little bit of a different view than the average person because I find there's a lot of pessimism, and I'm an internal optimist, y'all. I find there's a lot of pessimism on both sides of the camp, on the Republican side of the camp, on the Democratic side of the camp. There is some pessimism that we can actually even continue without ripping it all apart. That the Republican Party is even going to be able to continue. I've seen lots of people from both sides, but mostly who have been most outspoken about it obviously have been Democrats who think that the Republican Party is done. This is their turning point where they basically will either go with Biden Harris or they're going to shrivel and pass on, and the Republican Party will no longer be. And while I get that's where that's coming from, and I'm going to address that in just a moment, I am one of the people, and there are Republicans who are saying that as well. There's some of the moderate Republicans who are not MAGA Republicans, and they are absolutely horrified at what the Republican Party has become, and they also think that the Republican Party is done. It's a no deal and it's done. I, for one, think that it can be saved. I mean, as an eternal optimist. And I'm really tired of hearing young voices, minority voices, discounted in this conversation. You would think we would recognize what's going on, but we've gotten to that point where we've reached this fatigue where old people who, yes, we need their wisdom, but at some point a different generation has to come in and progress us forward. And generally, young people, minority people, are just being counted out of the decision table, out of the table of decisions altogether. And that includes women. That includes you too, white women. I mean, there's a reason why y'all are all on TikTok praising what Rosie O'Donnell is saying about Donald Trump. It's because you feel powerless. There's a reason for Moms for Liberty. It's because you feel powerless. But I'm here to tell you there's another way different from extremism, and it's led through Biden Harris. You can still be Republican and swing vote on into 2024 and vote for Biden Harris and hold on to your ideals, remain a Republican, but put the work in so that your party is repaired to get back to the point where there is a viable candidate who doesn't want to run America like a mob. We don't need a mob boss to run America. We need a president. I know that many Republican women, and I'm almost specifically talking to women right now. I'll let the men handle the men. But women, y'all, but I'm talking to everybody. Men, women, LGBTQ, minority, Asian, blue, black, Indian, Hispanic, whoever you are. But at this portion, just specifically women, because I've seen this discontented sort of grievance politics woman who people keep calling Karens out there. And let's just say I got a little sympathy for the Karens, because I get it. You guys are angry because you see, maybe you are married, maybe you have children, even maybe if you're single, but you see the life that you have become accustomed to collapsing around you. What is it? You don't have money for health insurance. You don't have money for child care. You don't have any savings. You don't have a pension like your parents had before you. Inflation is crazy. You can't afford gas. You can't afford to go to college. If you wanted to go and expand your qualifications, you can't go. You're scared of safety. You're scared of when you step outside of your house that something is going to happen. So you rack up on guns. And then you see more and more school shootings. You're scared for your kids, but at the same time, you want to keep your guns. You like, I get it. I get it. But the thing is black women feel in that way too. Not necessarily about the gun issues, not necessarily about the ideological standpoints, because we all have different ideological perspectives at the end of the day. But the problem is that the Republican Party right now has become the MAGA party and operating sort of like a mob, with scare tactics if anyone speaks out against it. And I have a feeling that's why many people don't speak out, is because they're fearful of what other people will think. I mean, sadly, that is how human nature is. Think of New York in the 80s, before Reagan really came into the scene and was you guys as sort of conservative superhero. Think about New York in the 80s. Do you want the entirety of America to become New York in the late 70s and the early 80s, where gangs and unalivings are happening every second, that you got to be fearful of just popping in the car or going to the grocery store, going to the convenience store, or going to the Family Dollar? Like, do you want that to be every second of every life? Because that's what's going to happen if Donald Trump is elected in 2024. The thing is we have lost sight. We've become so hammered into our ideological, like, sort of, we've become so attached to these ideological, identities that we've developed through social media. Social media can really be a problem because it really, really just exacerbates narcissism. And it hammers it in, and we're tribal creatures, right? We really, really connect with the community, and these ideological culture wars that billionaires and millionaires, they specifically drove wedges between us so that they could keep getting away with bags of money while committing tax fraud, while not having fair wages for their workers that reflect the actual income and increase in income that's coming through their companies. They actually have been driving these culture wars between us, and basically having America's Congress, America's judicial system, and ultimately the executive cabinet not be able to function to save face for them. And they drive wedges between us average, everyday Democratic and Republican folks, and make us very tribal, to the point that we really will want to beat you down for attacking them. Now, I work in advertising, and so I know how propaganda works, and so I guess I'm a little bit less inclined to drive the propaganda. If you go after Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I'm not going to be trying to come after you online. I'm not going to be trolling your page and sending you hate mail, because I'm in advertising. I understand how propaganda works. I can hold on to my belief systems and let you hold on to yours, and we can go home at the end of the day. The problem is, bottom line, Donald Trump cannot become president in 2024 because that won't be a democratic America. I almost said Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta, y'all. That won't be a democratic America. That will be fascist Germany in 1938, okay? Get it through your head, middle America. Get it through your head, housewives, that Donald Trump does not have your best interest in heart. I know that it's piqued up your tribalism. You're banding together because you feel safer. That's what community is about. It's about feeling safer. He is not the person, okay? He's gonna get rid of the federal government. That means your welfare checks. That means your Social Security. That means your 401k. That means someone you can get on the phone when you've got a question about your tax return. That means the fair and moderate prices that you get when you go into Target or Walmart or Sam's Club or Kroger's or whatever your national, your regional grocery store is. Prices are going to be crazy because when a country is ran where an elite gets all the money and everybody else gets scraps, that is Adolf Hitler. That is Vladimir Putin. That is Kim Jong-un. Okay? And I know that you guys have been consuming a lot of propaganda, and because of the MAGA Republican Party, you think that those figures are strong men who are going to protect you. But eventually, it comes back around to you, and you're going to have a lot of blood on your hands. But, I'm not going to go into that too much right now because the people that I'm talking to who this is going to resonate with, MAGA, a lot of you guys, I really want to have hope in you. Middle America, small town America, I grew up around you. I really want to have hope in you. But I think a lot of you guys are really going to need some intensive therapy. Because when you go through a cult type thing, it's a different situation. And I have empathy with that. I can understand that. I have empathy. Like this is a whole nother issue. But the problem is that if you fall, and I don't want to just lump this all together with Republican. There's people on the left as well who have fallen into extremism. But when you're dealing with, for example, you viewers who are watching this right now, you've probably encountered trolls on your social media page, online, whatever it is, and you have these exchanges with them, and it ends up being very strenuous. It ends up being very weighted and heavy and tense, and they don't seem to have any empathy. They're extremely sort of combative, like a malignant narcissist. Like you're talking with the bad guy from an evil villain movie, like they just want to not only make you seem incompetent, but they also want to just hurt you. It seems like if you were in their presence as an actual human being, they might do something bad to you. Like you might come home in a body bag. I know many of you all have had encounters with these type of personalities online, and they haven't just been on the right. They've also been on the left. And the issues with these people, what I'm saying is those are exceptions. These are people who are extremely vulnerable to mental illness. Maybe they are in the bouts of struggles with depression, anxiety. Maybe they're in the bouts of struggle with a personality disorder, with a stress disorder, with psychopathy. They could be dealing with some psychopathy. They could be mentally ill, mentally retarded, for a lack of a better word. I know that's a less accepted term in psychology these days, but I mean mentally retarded in the sense of they have retention for a certain amount of information that they can critically think through, a certain competence threshold that they can't reach because they are mentally unfit in some way. They could be dealing with that. This could be a situation, again, on the left or the right. I'm just letting you know, when you're dealing with these most extreme people who you really cannot have a constructive conversation with them, where you both walk away at the end of the day. You have your values, you have your opinions, you have your thoughts, you have your individual personalities, your backgrounds, and you're able to sort of get on and move on with your day, and everything is okay, and nobody is going to nobody is going to nobody's going to fear for their life. You get into some political conversations with people, even online, and you fear for your life, and that really shouldn't have to be where we are right now. There was a time pre-2015 where that was not the case. And yes, it stemmed up here and there, but before that, we had really reached a great point in American society. I really wanted to start this video off with saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I know some of you guys out there are going to be like, say the Pledge of Allegiance. What, Najwa? I don't know if they still say it in school now. It was definitely a part of my everyday life growing up in America, growing up in Atlanta, where we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. And I'm not sure if they do it in school anymore, but my best bet would be that they don't. I would think that in most schools, they probably don't really do it most of the time. And I honestly think maybe they should. And I'm going to compare this to home economics and gym. So, also growing up, and I'm really showing my age here, I'm showing the generation that I come from. Growing up, we had to take home economics, and generally, it was girls that had to take it, but boys had to take it too. Usually, you had some sort of elective course, even in elementary school, where you could take some sort of hobby class, almost like, and there was also shop, and usually it was boys who elected to take shop, and usually it was girls who elected to take home ec. I never took shop, but I did have to take home ec, and you were required to take gym. Now, I went to an arts-based school, later on in my teens, and so my gym was able to be ballet and hip hop and jazz and tap dance. And that right there was really good for me because I've always just really had creative arts in my heart. But before that, going back to junior high, going back to elementary school, and I will know whether you are a centrist, Republican, Democrat, some of you guys out there, especially if you're a millennial or Gen Y, sorry, not Gen Y, Gen X. Also, if you're Gen X or if you're baby boomer, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. You were required to take gym because you kind of had to get some sort of physical exertion in your day. Even if you didn't have gym, maybe your school had it where you were required to go outside and play on the playground at some point in the day. And I think that they're probably doing that less. And a lot of Republicans would call it woke, where people have taken that out of school. And I think that we just need to use our critical thinking skills and stop using a word that was appropriated for Black culture, meaning don't get hung. Let's maybe stop using that word and try and use our skills of deduction, try and use our critical thinking skills and just say what we really mean. Let's try to stop, kind of synthesizing stuff down to sound bites. What we really want to say is, we got rid of some stuff that was actually good for the development and growth of children who are going to turn into adults who have to go out into the world, into society, and function properly. We took some of those things out and we should have kept them. And gym, classes like home ec, classes like shop, I think were some of them. Because generally, for example, with gym, that was a course or an elective throughout your day. And I'm going to get to Biden-Harris in a moment. Just stick with me. Gym was a moment throughout your day where you actually were probably interacting with people outside of the people you generally saw every day in science, math, and literature, and history. Am I right, guys? Usually the people that you saw in gym were people from the other side of the hall, that sometimes you saw them at your locker or, but you generally didn't see them in your classes. And so that right there is one big metaphor for society where it develops this muscle. Think of it as a muscle where you have to, I'm not going to say you're forced, but it's a requirement for you to be around personalities different than your own and have a guiding light around you that is that gym coach, that is that principal who walks in and sort of takes rounds and sort of takes a look at from time to time. When I saw that story about the kid who got wrapped up in that gymnasium mat, and passed away, my first question was, where was the administration, And oftentimes the administration is stretched so thin that there's only so much that you can do. My mom's a teacher. I know about that. We need to have our state governments and our federal governments reinvigorating the public school system. We can't just wipe it out, Again, let's stop trying to synthesize stuff into, oh, well, let's just do that. Life, America, is more nuanced than that. But back to the point. You remember gym where you had to be in classes. The big point of that is you had to be around other people and be able to be okay with that, you know? And that right there builds great resilience. It builds great tolerance that we're not seeing today on our political landscape. And what I'm so upset with is that many baby boomers and Gen X out here who are spouting off extremely divisive far right or far left thinking, they had to do those things, but they forgot about them. They forgot about how to be tolerant. They forgot about how to be an advocate for themselves, but also to advocate for the people around them. That is what America is. If our democracy doesn't work with us all being able to be Democrats, Republicans, fat, skinny, black, white, Latino, Asian, Indian, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Baha'i, Buddhist, if it cannot operate, gay, straight, if it cannot operate with us all being able to be around, keep who we are here on the inside, but still be able to be around each other and it be okay, we've lost sight of what America is. We're going to come back to the Pledge of Allegiance in a second. Then, okay, so if Jim being that moment where we can really remember what it's like to be an individual, a part of a collective, and that be okay. Classes like home ec and gym, I looked the other day and there were 2 black women who were unalived in a brutal way, and their 2 models, beautiful, unalived in a brutal way in their apartments in downtown LA, within a mile of one another, I believe it was, and LA is like, no, it's not a serial killer. And they say that automatically, that fast. It's like, what? First of all, there is an attack on black women, and I really, really hope that people just wake up to that. It's a bare fact. When you look at victims of sexual abuse, you look at homicide victims, black women are the silent sufferers, and the criminal justice system often just overlooks them, and I hope that something is really done about that one day. But when I saw that coverage on the news, I sat there and I thought, man, these women are so beautiful, I wonder if they had a chance to take something like home ec. I wonder if they were able to study at a university, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way, but I asked myself, I wonder if, like my parents, their parents encouraged them to read, encouraged them to develop those things other than just their looks, because if you're a girl, and this is for all races, I just say that really quickly because that was something that struck me and it broke my heart, but it's really hard out there right now for people to go and date. I see this all the time on the news where people were brutally unalive by probably some mentally ill man who had been radicalized online in some way, but that is what untreated psychopathy looks like. And then they find a tribe where they really think they belong, but something deeply bad is happening. I look at that and, I just think, are people putting all the dots together, from childhood into adulthood? Are they realizing that they are more than just their looks, that there's something behind that? And if you're a young woman, if you're a girl, for example, again, specifically speaking to women, because it all comes together, politics, what happens when you go out there in the streets, out on the streets, when you feel unsafe, patriarchy that's been hammered for a long time, and then culture wars being driven up by a millionaire and billionaire class that are trying to protect their money bags. It all relates, especially for women, and that's women of any color, and the fact that, XEX trafficking is such a huge thing in certain cities, especially the city that I grew up in, having a functional justice system, having a functional police system is so important, but also having tolerance in society is important. And on the right, MAGA is not doing that. Tolerance is not a thing. So it's just going to make life more miserable even for you Republican women. even for you, even white, single white female, married white female stepping outside risks you becoming another statistic because misogyny is rampant right now. But, I wondered when I watched on the TV these two women who were brutally unalived. I asked myself, like my parents, did their parents say, know about your history? Know about where you come from. Study up on your origins, your cultural origins, but also read other cultural tokens. Read this book. Sit down, read this book. You need to read more books. Mama, I'm bored. Go and read a book. Turn that TV off. Go and read a book. And then did you go and discover something interesting? Yeah, I did. I discovered this fairy tale from I don't know, from the Netherlands, or I discovered this fairy tale from I discovered this Swahili folk tale. I heard about this person, and your parent says, "Oh yeah, I know that's that person from the 70s. Let me tell you a little bit about this." Did you sit down and have discussions about that? Did you sit down and have discussions about the scripture? Because many things that are highlighted today where, a woman has to protect herself in a certain way, and it doesn't have to be violent. It could just be in the choices that you make. It comes right there from the Bible. There's many stories about, how a woman really can protect herself. It's in art history. It's in the fairy tales. It's in fiction books. It's in science fiction from the 60s. It's on television. It's in those publications. It's in those articles. All in all, did you expand your mind as much as you made sure that your eyebrows were tweezed and how do you call the threading, as much as your eyebrows were threaded perfectly? And this is no judgment to the people who have passed, but this is a bigger societal question. Did you take the time to really look into religion, to really take time to connect with God? Did you read God's teachings, whether it was through the Quran or through the Torah, through the Bible? Did you really cultivate that relationship with God? Did you cultivate that relationship, that personal relationship? I'm not talking about just going to church and seeing what everybody's wearing and trying to show off what you're wearing. Did you really cultivate that relationship with understanding what God was telling you through scripture? Did you go to university? Quite literally. Did you expand your knowledge of the world? And this right here, I can understand if you're discontented that education is so expensive, but part of it is expensive because of what we talked about again. This elite class trying to get rid of everything, of university. I could just imagine that. How can you fall into this trap of them trying to get rid of Social Security, retirement, unions, pension, universities, literally public school? Like, what is going to be left? What's going to be left is us marching in the streets, with them running with bags of money, freaking money falling out, and you can catch the money if you can. Like, is that what you guys want? But did you go to university? Did you study from the past? Because the past would tell you that this world is an extremely misogynistic world. And though we're getting better, we're getting more tolerant, we're getting more open, psychopathy combined with coming from a patriarchal world, a world of colonialism, where it just said, if you're a man, you have everything that you need. And especially minority women, where women used to quite literally be sexually assaulted, and the perpetrator, there would be no crime, Just 60 years ago, that was prevalent. There would be no indictment. There would be no conviction. Are you understanding that? But even taking race out of that, going back to the times of Rome, where these big almost governors and senators within the Roman Empire government would sort of sexually assault women in front of a bunch of spectators, and there would be nothing done about it. Where if a woman was sexually assaulted in the Arabic world centuries ago, and it would be the woman who would be stoned, it wouldn't be the man who would get any sort of punishment. That's the world that we come from. And when you go and you delve into this beautiful book of human anthology that is our history, you learn that. And so you go out into the world with a dignity that the Lord has imparted in you, yes, but also with what you have studied. When you go out into the world, and this applies to whether you're doing online dating or not. I met my husband online, and I thought about these two women, and I'm going to try to go on from the subject, but the Lord spoke to me to speak about this a little bit. When I saw those two women, I'm actually writing a book about love, and I hopefully release it very soon. I'm just looking for the right publisher. But I wanted to speak specifically to millennials because I feel like it's very hard for us to date right now, especially because a lot of us feel like we need an app to help us find someone because we have become so socially awkward, so socially sensitized, and desensitized, I'm sorry. And so, but there's also this very real threat of if you do online dating, maybe it could end in you being a statistic. Maybe it's not safe. And I think that the values from the Arabic world of women getting stoned in the middle of the street and the perpetrator seeking no punishment, from 60 years ago of minority women, literally being sexually assaulted and the perp getting away scot-free, from the Roman Empire of senators and governors sexually assaulting a woman in the middle of the street and people just kind of standing around and being spectators and not doing anything about it. I think taking those ancient values from religion, from society, from knowledge, from the wealth of knowledge that our human anthology presents us, combined with the awareness that mental illness out there is a real thing and you got to protect yourself. I thought to myself, combined with that, can you have the consciousness to say, you know what? If I'm dating someone, let me not have them over for at least, I don't know, let's say 10 dates. 5 dates. Okay, 5 dates. Maybe that's a little bit more realistic. My husband didn't come to my apartment. I didn't go to his house until the 7th or 8th date. Okay? Now, given we did date, it was a very kind of whirlwind romance, and that might be the exception. Maybe you don't find your person, and it's really just like, you click and you really understand each other and you know each other automatically, this is the person you're going to marry. Maybe it's not that, but whether it is that or not, or you feel that it's that, maybe you just set a precedence in yourself. This is a crazy world, and we are coming out of a patriarchal, misogynistic world. Let me just, to be on the safe side, not have anybody over to my apartment, to my house, at least 5-10 dates, and in that time, you can feel it when someone is off. The same way that you guys, when you are interacting with some trolls online or a person at a bus stop or someone in traffic or someone in the grocery store, you can feel it when someone is mentally off, when someone is, for a lack of better words, sort of a malignant narcissist, someone who is sadistic, someone who is taking pleasure from your suffering. And if you are not so attuned to that, if you're not so attuned to how to protect yourself, to be honest, read, gain life experience, go and seek out education. Let us just go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance before I get caught up on a tangent. But ultimately, we are letting culture wars divide us, and I think we have forgotten America in all of this. And something that I had noticed was that I didn't remember the Pledge of Allegiance. I literally had to say it every day for 10 years, for a decade. I had to say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. In high school, I went to an arts-based high school, and I think it was dropped. I don't remember saying it every day. But we possibly did, but I don't think we stood up. I mean, in elementary school, you had to stand up, you had to put your hand on your chest and all that stuff. So it was definitely a thing. But the Pledge of Allegiance, I woke up this morning and I thought, that solidifies everything that we need to know, and it's got the answers in it. Let's say this together. And as I say it, it might spark your memory and you might remember better. So, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me just say that last line one more time. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One more time. Indivisible, meaning we should be united. With liberty, meaning we should be free. And justice, meaning when crimes are committed against us, justice should happen for all. There are very real threats out there, guys, and we can either fall prey to those threats divided, or we can fall prey to those threats as one united front. That's what makes America, you know. And to be so selfish to throw American democracy, whatever a Republican candidate is going to be, even if it's Christie, for example, the Republican Party is broken and fractured. It is going to bring on 1938 Germany. Okay? That's basically what's going to happen, and I don't have to remind you how many people died between 1933 and 1945. So, I don't think we want that, and I think that those wars that are raging on in Israel and Ukraine, if we don't want those to bleed over into the United States and to start losing thousands of Americans, it's time to get our act right and come together. It's time to do what we did in gym and be able to be our individual selves and still have love for my sister and my brother over there. Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As long as you are not hurting anyone, as long as you are not committing crimes, you should be free to be who you are and have other people accept that, okay? Hate crimes, gerrymandering, transphobia, don't say gay, talking about the benefits of slavery, hate crimes with mass shootings in minority marginalized areas, school shootings, tax fraud, voter suppression. That just doesn't read to me the America that I grew up in. Those things were happening. Corruption always happens, but it was not the tenet of an entire bipartisan party. So those come back to those things about fiscal responsibility. It's not fiscally responsible to take all the money out of the IRS and put it into the war in Ukraine so that the millionaire and billionaire class can evade their taxes. That's not fiscal responsibility. So the Republican Party getting back to fiscal responsibility, to economic conservativeship, to advocating for a small government, for state government, those are all tenets, a strong military, those are all tenets that I'm for, that's good. Less interaction with foreign trade, okay, and bringing more of the jobs home, that's something that I can get with. But telling people that they can or cannot have an abortion, like telling people that they can't say the word period or they can't say the word gay in a classroom, not giving kids education about, the way that their body changes in health education, getting rid of public schools that people of all races, all ethnicities, all kinds of average Americans rely on, getting rid of cops, getting rid of prosecutors, getting rid of judges, so that when bad people hurt us, that they can be held accountable and that society can become safer. Getting rid of our government that's been in place since 1776, getting rid of the Constitution. That's not something that the Republican Party is. That's something that a billionaire class and a millionaire class and some of their puppets who are trying to pay off people to basically do their bidding for them, that's what they want. But that's not what America wants, and it's not what's good for America or the tons of countries that depend on us being a united front economically and socially. And right now, on the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, which is like 90% of the Republican Party, that's all that we see. So you have two choices. You have the choice of where thousands and thousands and thousands of people that you've grown up alongside, people who are like you, who have blood like you, who have children and a mother and a dad like you, who are going to basically be unalived at some point because America will become a fascist state. You have the choice between that, or you have the choice between Biden Harris and letting America's Republican Party repair itself. Okay? There is no argument. There is no argument. You cannot hand it over to a mob boss. So, beyond the social issue of, the risk of America becoming fascist Germany held under Adolf Hitler, buildings just being dilapidated and crushed by tanks, people afraid to speak out about any little thing. Yeah, we don't want that. But beyond that issue, because that's what it will be, whether you buy it or not, that's what it will be. Young people, you have the ability to change that. You can change that outcome. You can make sure that right there doesn't happen by voting blue in 2024. Biden Harris, if you aren't yet registered to vote, go on vote.gov, okay? You can register there. Vote.gov, and you can also go on to vote411.org to know when your elections are coming up. Now, find out about who it is that's going to be running for your council people in your city, for your senators and House of Representatives, for sheriff. Find out those things. Look at your local news. Look on Ballotpedia once you know the names of those people and study up on them. Realize if what they represent really represents what you want to see in government, okay? But as far as electing Biden Harris, they have done so much to hold on to that stability that we had back before 2015, that stability of that school gymnasium, of where we could be individuals and we could still walk away at the end of the day with no one getting hurt physically, mentally, socially, economically because of a difference of who they are as individuals. We want to get back to that time. Biden Harris is that path forward because they currently are the only ones who are really, really talking about the issues that are happening in a real way, the issues that are happening with Black people and brown people being executed, with us about to be on the risk of a global catastrophe because of climate change and corporations not taking that seriously. They are the only ones who are taking corporate greed seriously and who are not following the steps of the lobbyists, but following what the American people need. They're the only ones truly doing that right now with the amount of experience in policy, in the law, in the justice system. A policy, passing laws. I mean, Biden has been around for a very long time. So he's where the majority of Americans are on the social and ideological spectrum. Okay? Kamala Harris is where the majority of Americans are on the ideological and social spectrum. Doesn't want to see Black, brown, LGBTQ people slaughtered in the middle of the street. Wants you to have your general, laws that come about around your taxes, around your retirement, around unemployment, around Social Security, around childcare, around education. Um, that's pretty much where, they're pretty much where everyone is. Biden went out and stood in the picket lines with people. And there is no other Democratic candidate right now because, for example, Shank from the Young Turks, which I love, but Shank as president, running against Joe Biden, it's laughable. It's absolutely laughable. Right now, we have become so desensitized to propaganda that we don't know when it's happening. We don't know when someone is manipulating us because they're going to make a few bucks off of it, but not actually be able to follow through on what they say. Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, are you kidding me? Even Nikki Haley. Christie, no. No. Christie would be a good contender if there were some other normal Republicans within the fold. If the Republican Party wasn't broken and hadn't turned into a fascist, unempathetic, sort of protecting lobbyists and the NRA and, extreme evangelical Christians who are millionaires and billionaires who basically just want to get abortion out at all costs, even if it means, thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans are suffering. That's we don't have the Republican Party of McCain. We don't have the Republican Party of Mitt Romney. We don't even have the Republican Party of Mike Huckabee. Like his daughter is a bad egg. She is representative of that MAGA extremism. Mike Huckabee was probably down the lines, but he came of age as a politician in a time where there were still some scruples. There are no scruples. Like, there are no George H.W. Bushes. There are no Ronald Reagans. That's not that Republican Party. If Chris Christie was running against figures like that, figures like George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, John McCain, Ronald Reagan, okay, that'd be good. But the Republican Party is no longer that. It's manifested into an ideological party that no longer wants to do its job, that no longer wants to pass law on, again, Social Security, education, tax policy, foreign trade, military. I know I'm sounding like a broken record. Education, childcare, but that's the thing that government is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be sitting here telling us whether or not we can get an abortion, whether or not we can say the word gay, whether or not we can say the word period, banning books. That's all distraction techniques, okay? It's all distraction techniques. The government needs to be doing its job, okay? It needs to be doing its job. It's supposed to be making the streets safer, okay? And that includes white collar and blue collar crime. And that is what Biden-Harris is doing. Biden-Harris is making the streets safer by actually speaking out against terrorists, foreign and domestic, speaking out against transphobia, homophobia, speaking out against this terrible element within the MAGA wing of America that just said, no, I'm not going to accept elections. I'm not going to accept the federal government. I'm not going to accept any of it because this person told me to do so. And I'm feeling like I'm in my tribalism, so I can't go against it. No. We need to get back to some sense of normalcy. So go to vote.gov, go to vote411.org, vote blue, vote Biden-Harris in 2024. The other thing that I want to point out is the war in Israel. Look at how Biden-Harris sort of really, they click into place like a well-oiled machine with empathy and compassion, with normal human emotions when these traumatic things, like what happened on the campus in the black neighborhood in Florida when the shooter took out some lives, when the recent school shootings have happened since 2021 when they took office, like when catastrophic climate change issues have happened, like when the war in Ukraine broke off, when the war in Israel broke off. Look at their responses. Look at their responses to the SAG-AFTRA union. Look at their responses that are so intuitive and compassionate, normal. When the American people say, I'm hurting, please help me, they help them. You know, it's not about protecting their real estate tycoon business. It's not about getting as many campaign monies as possible. It's not about denying the results of an election. It is just, I want to help the American people. When I hear Donald Trump talk, I don't hear very much about the American people. And when I do hear people like Tim Scott talk about the American people, it doesn't sound genuine. It sounds like a lobbyist using this person as a mouthpiece, you know. Christie, you know, he falls off for me where his values just don't seem to resonate with what the majority of America wants. You know, he's trying to basically save face with the Republican Party while still trying to appeal to the average American voters, but he's not realizing, hey, if you're president, you've got to be the president of Democrats and Republicans. It's sort of like when you are a doctor. You're a doctor. Your job is to save lives. It doesn't matter if the person comes into your hospital, is on your stretcher, your hospital bed, whether they are Republican or Democratic. Your job is to save lives. You know, you think a doctor is going to sit there and say, so tell me, how do you feel about gun policy in the United States? Oh, you want guns taken out? Nope, can't perform this surgery. That's no. Politicians have to be nonpartisan. You know, politicians that hold the highest public office in the land have to be nonpartisan. Politicians, you know, in their governing, they can still hold on to their values, their individualism, but they have to pass policy and advocate and legislate policy for everyone in America. The safety of everyone in America. And Christie is not that person to me. There are just so many things that Biden Harris have done for the economy. And, you know, again, the Republicans use Bidenomics as a quip towards him when Bidenomics is working. You know, unemployment is down. It's much further down than it was when Donald Trump was president. There are much less job vacancies. You know, Donald Trump, you know, put this big span about immigration policy and creating all of these jobs, but, you know, the white people, the Americans, even just general Americans, black people, white people, Latinos, white collar Latino, they didn't want to take the jobs that many of the immigrants were doing. So then you had all of these random job vacancies. And again, I've said it on this channel, whenever you make America's political, you know, America's democracy a boys club where there is an in crowd and an out crowd, that generally does not cultivate the most, you know, sane and healthy work environment. And so also just a lot of people, overqualified people, qualified people don't get the jobs that they deserve. So there's less job openings. You know, so more people are, there's more butts and seats. There's more people in jobs. There's less unemployment. There is, so inflation was really driven up by COVID and by the leftovers of Donald Trump. Since Donald Trump's administration, you know, like Biden and Harris, they've inherited a lot of really nasty, bad economic situations from Donald Trump's administration, because he was a TV show host and not on Capitol Hill every single day cranking out policy. He just doesn't know policy. And neither does people like Vivek Ramaswamy. You know, it's like, no, just no. But, you know, you also have to consider that Trump inherited a great economy from Barack Obama. You know, most of Barack Obama's criticism comes from a deeply tribal place. It comes from othering, you know. But Barack Obama did a really good job. And you have to remember that politicians are not going to be perfect. Administrations are not going to be perfect. So if you think they're going to get in there and they're going to make America a perfect place, and you're going to be angry because the outcome is anything other than that, then you got something bad coming. You got to use those critical thinking skills. And you got to use those critical thinking skills to know that you win some, you lose some. But in general, politicians have to be like that, doctor. They have to create policy legislation and be the leader of a country for Democrats and Republicans. And even those people who are suffering from psychosis and mental health, who really aren't competent enough to make decisions for themselves or make decisions for voters or other voters or for themselves as a voter. Biden's numbers, jobs are up 13 million. So this is since January 20th, 2021 to January, February, March, April. This is probably, let's just say half of the year 2023 because I'm rounding up. But 13 million jobs, okay? Unemployment rate is down 4%, and this is an update. I'm giving some of the numbers that I know are updated since, and we're looking at this now here in November 2023, but unemployment rate is down. And you know what? Let me just see if I can find a more... Nope, they haven't published numbers as of Q3. But unemployment rate is down. I know that from keeping up with this. 4%. Because again, cultivating a fascist boys club kicks unemployment up. I mean, let them eat cake. Marie Antoinette, yeah, that was real. There was a reason the French Revolution happened. People don't like starving out in the middle of the streets while rich people just are like, hey, culture wars. Don't look at my money bags, running away with their money bags. So there's more job openings. And I think that this right here is a social issue. Because I think that, I watch many, and I'm speaking from my perspective here as an African American, but I know that disabled people, LGBTQ people, Asians, Hispanic, Latinx, indigenous people, all kinds of marginalized people I know are going to resonate with the fact that they will apply to the jobs. They will be overqualified for the jobs. They won't get the jobs because, again, Donald Trump cultivated a boys club. Biden-Harris in 2024. There's no other way. After that, from 2024 to 2028, Republican Party do the most that you can, but this is going to take years and years and years to reform the rot that is stemmed up there. Just like it took years and years and years after Reconstruction to make the Democratic Party what it is today. Because, yeah, the Democratic Party used to be racist, but it's changed. You have to change with the ebb and flow of times while retaining democracy and not becoming an autocracy. It's a requisite. It involves critical thinking. If you are not mentally capable of doing that, it's that's a different ball game. So the economic growth rate is up 2.1% by 2022. I'm pretty sure that's up. The S&P 500 is up 7%. There's more unalivings. And I'm going to say, again, I feel like the Republican Party is turning the heat up so high on hate speech, where it's just commonplace. Things that, if they would have said that back in, let's throw out 2004 as an example. If I heard politicians back in 2004 say what politicians say today so brazenly, about hating different communities, hating Jewish communities, hating black communities, hating the LGBTQ communities, there would be uproar. But today it's become so commonplace that we've just sort of kind of turned off to it. But when that's become so commonplace, yes, unalivings happen more. It's dog whistles for those people in society who are suffering from mental illness, and they go out and they do terrible things. Biden-Harris, tolerant people. We're going to need tolerant people in the White House. And people who are tolerant, who have policy experience. I keep hearing people go on and on about Biden's age. Like Democrats, if you are out here going against Biden-Harris, you really want to see America become 1933, 19 43 Germany, you know, and you're going to get what you want. And Biden Harris, you know, I'm sorry, Joe Biden will be he's what 3 years older than Donald Trump? How much is it? 2 years older? So he'll be still 2 years older than Donald Trump, and you're gonna have your friggin' autocracy. You're gonna be on the out plan. You're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get hurt economically, fiscally, socially, and hopefully not, but maybe violently, physically. And Biden will still be his same age, and he'll still be healthier than Donald Trump, physically, mentally, and you're going to be partly responsible for driving us into this business. If I hear one more Democrat talk about Biden's age, talk about his policy, talk about his tolerance, talk about how he has helped repair this fucking economy that Donald Trump has left behind, this social rot of hate that Donald Trump has left behind, even when Donald Trump's pawns are still in Congress and they try to stop all the progress that Biden does. So Democrats talking about Biden's age and stop holding back progress. We've got to be one united front on this. Grow up, you know, nobody is perfect. So just please grow up. So labor force participation is up 1.3 points. I'm pretty sure that is gone up since then. Consumer sentiment is down, but again, that right there goes right in line with the unalivings. You know, that right there to me is right in there with MAGA. You know, every single step that Biden Harris takes, they try to dial it down on the other end because it gets them more podcast deals, because it gets them more, you know, gold stars with their gun lobbyists, their cigarette lobbyists, their evangelical lobbyists who don't want women to get abortions on a nationwide ban. Yeah, when you have propaganda just funneling that anger into you, that poison every day, yeah, consumer sentiments are going to go down. It's almost like you're standing in the way of this economy improving because of stupid social stuff. U.S. border apprehensions is up, you know, like our relations, foreign relations are all very, very tense right now because we're not indivisible. We are very, very divisible. So it really doesn't surprise me that Mexico and America is having some issues. It doesn't surprise me that what MAGA sort of spits out into the world, this authoritarian hatred that they spit out to the world, America is on a world stage, is reverberating. Biden Harris doesn't do that. Vote Biden Harris in 2024 on all levels. Vote Democrat in 2024. The Republican Party, again, I am for a two-party system. The Republican Party is going to have to repair itself while Democrats work to sort of get this back up to a functioning, fully functioning democracy with the help of some sane Republicans. So home ownership is up 0.1% as of, spring 2023. Yeah, again, that boys club. People can't buy homes. They can barely get the jobs that they're overqualified for because the millionaire class is sucking the air out of the economy. And they're also trying to evade their taxes on a huge federal scale. So, yeah, blue in 2024. You want to get a home? You want to be able to send your kids to college? You want to be able to go to the hospital if you need to? You want to be able to retire comfortably? Yeah, you're going to need to vote blue in 2024 if you want to do that. If you're a millennial, you want to buy a house, you want to have health care, you want to be able to even just go buy a dress if you want to, buy a watch that you've been looking at, but, even if you're making six figures, you're living paycheck to paycheck, yeah, vote Biden Harris in 2024. Let's see, home prices is up 23.4%. And ironically, somebody lied about their real estate property values by millions and millions of dollars. Ironically. And the real estate market is suffering. That is a really, really interesting coincidence. corporate profits are up 36%. That right there doesn't surprise me. The question is why are average employees not making the amount of money that they need to cover their bases? Biden-Harris in 2024. The gas prices is up. So this right here, let me just take 2 seconds to talk about this, because Republicans are often, MAGA Republicans are often going on about inflation. Moderate Republicans understand that what we do in Congress reflects how inflation ebbs and flows. It ebbs and flows. And there's so many things that go into it. There's our allies, our imports and our exports. There's the fact of, can our Congress pass legislation? How on earth do you expect inflation to improve if Congress can't even pass legislation? The Republican Party that is in Congress can't do the basic demands of legislation. If you want to save American democracy, vote blue in 2024, Biden-Harris in 2024.